Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Do any board members have a comment? Any members of the public in the room have a comment? Rico, can you see if there are any comments from members of the public, please, online?
No public comment.
Thank you. So that concludes this item. No action is required of the board. Thank you very much. Now we'll turn over to D8, Information Technology Update. So please look at page 61 of your board packet for the Information Technology Update, and I will turn it over to CSLB Chief of Information Technology, Jason Perez.
Thank you, Board Chair Teichert, and good afternoon, everyone. On page 61 begins the Information Technology Update, and today I am providing an update on two important topics for the CSLB IT division: business modernization delay and IT security enhancements. These subjects have significant implications for the organization and are crucial to address to ensure continued growth and success of CSLB. To start with business modernization initiative, as you may recall, at the last board meeting in March, the CSLB IT division embarked on a modernization project aimed at streamlining our application process, enhancing customer experience, and improving internal efficiencies. The project aimed to leverage cutting-edge technologies and innovative approaches to transform our system and processes. However, I have regret to inform you that we have experienced unforeseen delays in this modernization effort. Despite the best intentions of the efforts of our dedicated team, we faced several challenges that affected the project timeline. These challenges included technical complexities and external dependencies beyond our control. We recognize the importance of this initiative and the urgency to bring it back on track. Excuse me. To mitigate the delays and ensure successful implementation, we have taken the following steps. We have engaged with our partner, Department of Consumer Affairs, to enlist their support to identify a new software platform. Their perspective, insights, and recommendations will assist in overcoming the obstacles that we did encounter. Then also too, we will revise the project plan. Based on the review and their expert advice, we'll revise the project plans considering the necessary adjustments and address the issues that hindered the progress. Our commitment to modernizing the CSLB remains unwavering, and we are confident that we have a revised plan. We will get back on track and achieve our objectives. We'll provide you with regular updates on progress and milestones as we move forward. We currently have vendors scheduled over the next few weeks to review solutions on the online application. We anticipate having a project plan completed by September. On June 8th, I did bring this to the attention of board member Susan Granzella, who was reappointed by Chair Teichert to the IT Advisory Committee. Susan, would you like to make any comments?
You didn't tell me I had to speak. No, I was saying I was delighted to be working with you on this. And as Mary was able to explain, Amanda, our new board member, Amanda McGuire, will be joining us. So hopefully in September, we'll have more specific information because there are always things that happen in IT or any other business that are beyond our control. So specifics should be reported to the board next September. And I'm looking forward to working with you on that. And Amanda.
Thank you, Board Member Granzella. Now turning our attention to IT security enhancements. In today's digital landscape, cyber threats continue to evolve. It is crucial that we remain vigilant and proactive in safeguarding our systems, data, and sensitive information. The CSLB IT division has made significant strides in enhancing our IT security posture. We have implemented a multi-layered security framework that includes the following measures: robust firewalls and intrusion detection systems. We have fortified our network infrastructure with advanced firewalls and an intrusion detection system to prevent unauthorized access to detect any suspicious activities. We also continue regular security audits and assessments. These regular security audits and assessments help identify vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and potential risks. This helps us proactively address any of these issues and strengthen our defenses. Also, too, we have employee awareness and training. We believe that a well-informed and educated workforce is a vital component for a robust security posture. Therefore, we have partnered with Department of Consumer Affairs to implement a comprehensive training program to raise awareness about cybersecurity's best practices and promote a security-conscious culture throughout CSLB. And lastly, we have an incident response plan. In the event of a security incident, we have updated our incident response plan to ensure a prompt and effective response, minimizing potential damage and downtime. While we have made significant progress in the last few months, we understand that cybersecurity is an ongoing journey and new threats will continue to emerge. Therefore, we are committed to regularly assessing and enhancing our security measures to stay ahead of evolving risks. In conclusion, the CSLB IT division remains dedicated to the successful modernization of our systems and the continuous improvement of our IT security. Despite the challenges we face with the modernization project, we are actively working to overcome them and get back on track. Simultaneously, we will continue to invest in robust IT security measures to safeguard our organization against potential threats. Thank you for your attention. I am open to any questions or feedback.
So are there any questions or comments from board members? Okay, how about from the public in the room? Rico, do we have any comments or questions from members of the public?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate the update. And no action is required of the board, so that concludes this item. So next, Pete, please turn to page 65 of your board packet for a proposed amendment to the board's procedure manual recommended by staff. The changes are recommended to provide flexibility to conduct work to facilitate board-approved proposals or actions without having to come back to the board for each action. This will enable staff to more effectively and timely communicate the board's position and carry out approved legislative proposals. So the draft amended language to the procedural manual that's currently printed on page 65 has been updated since the board packet was printed. The new language is displayed on a slide on the screen, and board members, you also have it as a handout. Legislative Chief Fana Lamar, can you please describe this recommended change to the board procedures manual, as well as a suggested new language that's different than what's printed on page 65?
Thank you, Chair Tykert. So staff are proposing to amend the board member administrative manual to enable staff to carry out the directives of the board. As you may know, the legislative calendar moves very quickly. Since the last board meeting, many bills have been amended and have cleared several significant hurdles in the legislature. By our next meeting, all bills will be with the governor. When a bill is amended, the board's position statement only applies to the version in print when the board took the position. So the changes to the procedures would allow staff to continue communicating the board's position after consultation with the legislative committee chair. The changes would also authorize staff to negotiate amendments in the best interest of CSLB's mission and board goals. Additionally, legislative proposals need significant work after board approval. The proposed changes would allow staff to find an author, provide testimony, and negotiate amendments to carry out the goal of the board. The authorization being requested is only extended in specific circumstances, and this is something that was added and is new on your new printout, where we limit it to specific circumstances in the final paragraph to those actions stated. So those would be legislative proposals and amended bills on which the board took a position. I am happy to answer any questions and turn it back to Chair Tykert. Thank you.
Thank you. So the staff recommendation is that the board approve the suggested changes to page 16 of the board procedure manual. Specifically, that staff are authorized to work with one board member as opposed to two when seeking authority to take action on pending legislation when time constraints preclude meeting with the full board, as long as the board is notified as soon as possible of that position. That for board-sponsored legislation, staff are authorized to communicate to the legislature the board's position on board-sponsored legislation, as well as secure a legislative author for the proposal and negotiate amendments within the stated policy or purpose of that proposal. To clarify that staff has authority to communicate a position taken by the full board on introduced legislation, as well as to negotiate any amendments described in any recommendation approved by the board to support, neutral, or oppose unless amended. And finally, memorialize for the record that staff will not be taking any position not taken by the full board or authorized by the legislative chair when time constraints preclude full board action. So do I have a motion to adopt the staff recommendation? There's some question, the way that the process is set up, and you guys can check me on this, but I think we're going to have a motion in a second if there are such, and then we'll have questions and comments and then a vote after that. Okay, so yeah.
Through the chair, Jim Ruane, so moved.
Thank you. And Chair Member Guy, do you want to second that?
Yes.
All right. So are there any board member comments or questions before we take public comment? And first we'll ask Susan Granzella to comment or question.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you. So I do understand this, and having been chair, and there have been fast-moving support communications that needed to go to the legislature. Really, this is just streamlining the way we are going to respond to find the legislative, vehicle and all of those. But under what criteria are you setting where it is important to, when you've made a change significant enough that the board needs to hear it? I mean, how are you going to be sending, will the registrar or legislative analyst send out a note that we've made this change, you voted on this, it has changed this way? Under what criteria will you be notifying the board? Will it be at the board next board meeting or an email? I just wanted to know, because I agree it needs to be streamlined.
Yeah, I would just, it's my understanding, this is just simply to streamline the process so we don't have to both contact the chair and the vice chair for a relatively minor issue. But these bills do change. If they become controversial, there's something put into a bill we think would concern the board, and absolutely come back to the board. So this is just to get an author and to write letters. One thing we do when the board sponsors a bill, or today you'll be voting on bills if you support a bill, we write letters to the legislature in support of that bill. It would just give us the authorization to do that. But if there's anything controversial, we'll absolutely update you. And if there's something I think of your interest, I'll absolutely put in my update.
Thank you.
Other board questions or comments? Okay. And Board Member Ruane, if you have any comments, we'd love to have them as well. I'm kind of grouping the whole board together. And then any public comments from the room? Enrico, can you please check to see if there are any comments from members of the public?
No public comment.
Okay. So in that case, let's call the roll. Mariah, if you would be so kind.
Mary Teichert,
Yes.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Gallo,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence. Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. So the motion has carried, and I appreciate the work that went into that. It'll be helpful to have that streamlining. So we'll turn over to item E, legislation, and I will begin with Legislative Committee Chair Miguel Galarza.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Tiger. I'm going to begin the legislative agenda with agenda item E1, which is an update, review, and discussion and possible action on 22-24 legislative strategic plan objectives. That, by the way, begins on page 71 of your packet. The board's 2022-24 strategic plan identifies goals and objectives for the legislative division. Ifana Lamar will provide an update for each objective. Ifana, carry on.
Hi, thank you, Legislative Chair Galarza. I am actually going to only provide an update for the two that have due dates this year. So the first one is strategic plan item 3.1, to host an annual legislative day to build proactive relationships with lawmakers and to enhance effectiveness. Scheduling conflicts and the legislative calendar prevented us from holding a legislative day this year. And we are so far into the legislative calendar, it's not feasible to request legislators' time at this point. However, senior scam stopper events are a great way to meet with legislators and their staffers. So Board Member Galarza did meet with a legislator when he presented at an event hosted by Assemblymember Lee on June 9th. We heard Board Member Galarza was very well received and well liked by the attendees. Next year, we will have multiple opportunities to meet with members of the legislature that comes along with the sunset review process. So this objective will be easy to achieve starting next year and from that point forward. The other strategic plan item is 3.6, review and collaborate with local and state government to determine if CSLB's hazardous and asbestos certification remain viable and are effective in protecting consumers in declared disaster areas. That objective has a due date of July 2023. We plan to begin stakeholder consultations on this objective in July, which is the target completion date. With that, the legislative strategic plan update is complete. So I return the floor to Legislative Chair Galarza.
And thank you, Fauna. Are there any comments from board members or questions on this item?
I appreciate you representing us so well. Sounds like that was awesome.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing no others, this agenda item is only an update, and so there's no motion that's required, and we can move on to the next legislative agenda item, which will be E2, review and discussion and possible action on 2023 pending legislation. There's a status summary for each bill that we will discuss, that we did discuss in the March board meeting, beginning on pages 75 and 76. Full bill analysis follow on pages 77 through 95. We have several bills for which staff have recommended positions for providing updates. We'll begin with the following agenda item, which is E2A, AB 33-6 by Assemblymember Cervantes, which begins on page 77 of your material. This bill would apply to licensees who are not exempt from obtaining workman's comp insurance. This bill would require that those licensees to provide their top 3 workers' comp compensation codes by payroll to CSLB at the time of renewal. This bill would also prohibit renewals without those codes, but would also authorize retroactive renewal if the licensee complies within 30 days after notification by the CSLB that the renewal was rejected. Fano, will you please discuss this bill?
Thank you, Chair Galarza. So although I provided a summary of the bills presented to the board, I wanted to let you know now. I'll provide an updated status on each bill because there was a lot of movement in the legislature last week. So regarding AB 336, we discussed this bill at the board meeting in March, and the board decided to watch the bill. Staff had concerns that because this bill addresses insurance fraud, CSLB's website may not provide the informational value to the public that the sponsors hope it would. Additionally, board members had concerns that CSLB could incur liability from misreported workers' compensation codes posted on our website. There were also concerns that CSLB could be responsible for verifying or investigating whether the licensee provided the correct codes. This bill also comes at a cost of $227,000 to CSLB for changes to the IT systems. The sponsors of this bill amended the bill on April 27th to state that CSLB is not responsible for incorrectly reported codes posted to our website. So they listened to board member concerns. They also amended the bill to state that CSLB is not responsible for verifying or investigating the accuracy of those codes provided by licensees. The sponsor at that time asked for reconsideration of our fiscal. IT Chief Prez's team reanalyzed the bill, and the fiscal impact remains as it was before at $227,000. So despite staff concerns about the value posting these codes would provide, the sponsors addressed board member concerns on 2 separate occasions. Once to limit the reporting to the top 3 codes by payroll, that reduced the fiscal from over $1 million to $227,000. And they amended the bill again to eliminate CSLB's liability. Because of that, we're recommending a neutral position. Currently, this bill, it just passed the Senate Committee on Business Professions and Economic Development, and it's scheduled to be heard in the Committee on Appropriations on Monday, June 26th. That's my update for that bill.
Thank you, Fana. The SAC recommendation, as Fana described, is neutral. However, is there a motion moving forward? Mark.
Michael Mark here. My memory of the last meeting was to support if amended. So maybe if we could, were the amendments that we were talking about, because I still feel the same way, that this is a good bill for the public. It's a bill where the concerns of the CSLB addressed. And I kind of went back to the minutes and I kind of remember that we did vote as a support if amended. So maybe, Fawn, if you could let me know and understand which parts of the amendments weren't done by the sponsor.
Well, we were hoping, at the time, we were hoping to establish the consumer protection value this would provide. That did not happen. They didn't address that in amendments. And with the fiscal, this is just a staff recommendation to remain neutral on this. But of course, if the board feels this bill provides value, we could certainly support it. Or we could communicate your support, sorry.
This is Board Member Teichert. It strikes me that the intention of the bill is just as Board Member Mark described in terms of making these things more transparent and available. But also the effect of it feels somewhat limited. So if we're only going to report 3 possibly incorrect codes, feels to me like, and we're going to spend $250,000 doing that, and we're not even at our 4 to 5 months in reserve that we want from a budgetary standpoint. It's hard to see that that's going to create a bunch of value. So I feel like, for me, neutral at best seems sufficient. It's also not that we're the only source of this information. My understanding is this comes from the insurance.
Yeah, the statistical agents for the California Department of Insurance is the Workers' Compensation Insurance Rating Bureau. So one would think they would have this information, but they don't. If they do have it, they're not publicizing, and they would prefer that we do. So that's my understanding.
So because that's my other piece, is I feel like the CSLB is super responsible and takes on a lot of responsibility for contractors. And also there's other state agencies that have jobs to do. And so Department of Insurance has a role to play here as well. So I would stick with neutral personally, would be my thought.
As a follow-up on that, myself, as a contractor, I currently have 10 codes. So which 3 of the 10 do I put? And does that expose me to some type of liability? And there are a lot of contractors that have more than 3 codes. And so trying to decide which ones to put down may be problematic. And for that, I certainly concur that we should stay neutral on this until that's figured out.
Any other board comments or questions?
Michael.
So in that, I believe that's why they amended the bill to make it from the concerns of the board, that limited it only to the 3. And to my understanding, it's going to be the top 3 from what I'm reading here. In the end, our board serves the public, and obviously there is fiscal impact for anything that's done for the public needs, right? In my opinion, I think sometimes, and you hear a lot about workers' comp issues. And I think from here, from the fact sheet that I read here, or just the information that was provided, that could be a perfect case where a contractor is doing the right thing, paying the proper workers' comp code for, let's say, a roofing contractor paying for a roofer's workers' comp, but they're actually paying for, let's say, office staff instead of their employees. So that's, in my opinion, that's good for the public to know and understand where they're at on that value. If we're looking for a motion, I would make a motion to change our staff recommendation to support for this bill.
So would we, Mike, would we entertain the original motion and then entertain a second motion, or how would we proceed?
Yeah, do you want, if the board member makes a motion, we can vote on the motion.
Okay. Is that right? So that is the current motion on the floor is to take an affirmative. Is that, am I
Yeah,
understanding?
yeah, that's correct. Michael Mark make the motion to that we change our staff position from neutral to support of this bill.
Is there a second on that motion?
I second it. Johnny Simpson, I second it.
Mariah, are there, do I need to take public
Yeah,
comment?
room for comment.
Yeah, let's have a public comment and or Jim, remote comment first.
I think I'd like to add a comment too. I think your point that they amended the bill is certainly true. I just don't think the amendments went far enough because one of the things we wanted was some demonstration of value. So to the point about there's 10 codes, I mean, we probably have 50. But so which one was left off? Were those the top three or the right ones? Creates questions without creating value because there might be a valid code within the set that we have that's not reflected in the top three and therefore doesn't connect to whatever insurance topic they've got. And now the CSLB is involved in it instead of just the license board. So I feel like the demonstration of value wasn't there. I think the intent is cool, but as far as our role in the implementation of it, I don't think the amendments captured what we would need, which is a super valuable thing for the public. Because I think we would happily pay, even the original tab of $1 million for site updates if we thought this was totally valuable for the public. So that's my 10 cents on whether this is going to accomplish the goal that we're trying to look at here.
Mariah, is there, oh, excuse me, Johnny.
For my 10 cents, and this has always been an issue within the construction industry, and finding some solve to this is, I mean, I'm glad we're on the track that eventually everyone's going to have workers' comp and that sort of thing, but at the same time, good contractors have lost jobs over workers' comp issues. We have to find some sort of solution to this, even if we're just posting on our website the different codes, what they should be carrying. I mean, we've got to, this is a major issue within our industry. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, John. Anyone else on the board? Public comment, Mariah or Rico?
We have a public comment from Mario Wilson. Mario, I've sent you a request to unmute, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Mario Wilson, and I represent Western Steel Council, the largest employer association that is signatory to the District Council of Ironworkers. We represent over 50 companies that account for 80% of all the association's hours and do close to $1 billion worth of work every year in California. We know that contractors that play by the rules are undercut by unscrupulous contractors that misclassify. These classification codes will allow our companies a fair shot during the bidding process and make sure that workers are protected. Publishing the classification codes linked to a contractor's policy enables awarding bodies and enforcement agencies to verify if companies bidding on a project comply with the appropriate workers' compensation rates for their employees. This increased transparency will lead to less stress on the state workers' compensation fund. The Western Steel Council requests a support position from the board members of the Contractors State License Board on bill number AB 336. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Thank you. Rico, anyone else?
No further public comment.
Board member Guy?
Yeah, I would, I think in terms of a contractor, it's important to report these codes. I would agree that this is probably more of a workers' comp and Department of Insurance. In terms of this board for consumer protection, I don't see how workers' comp codes being displayed on the Contractor State License Board is going to help protect consumers. That's my 2 bits.
Thank you. Seeing no more comment, I'll go ahead and reaffirm the motion to support.
We have one more public comment.
Thank you, Rico.
Coming in from Mitchell. And Mitchell, I have sent a request to unmute. And you have 3 minutes to speak. Go ahead, Mitchell.
All right. So AB 336, the bill speaks directly to this misclassification of workers. When contractors misclassify during that bid process, they get an unfair advantage compared to every other contractor that's bidding for that scope of work. So we tried to address this by having all of the classification codes listed. Staff's recommendations were to slim that down to account for the fiscal cost. We worked with CSLB over the last 2 cycles to get this over the finish line and to get a support position from you guys. We've accepted all, or the author rather, has accepted all of the proposed amendments from you. This is a one-time fiscal cost, and it's going to allow both enforcement agencies and awarding bodies to be able to actually look at what rates a company or contractor is actually paying workman's compensation for during that bid process. So they get a real-time update of what's happening. It allows them, that transparency so that we can be awarding honest contractors that do good work and employ good people to be able to get those jobs comparatively to bad actors who are, undermining the system and misclassifying workers across the state. So again, the fiscal cost is a one-time fee for a lifetime of transparency. We would ask from the district council's perspective that you take a support position, and we appreciate your guys' work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Rico?
No further public comment.
Thank you. With that, to reaffirm the motion to support and the second from Johnny Simpson, Mariah, would you roll, please?
Mary Teichert,
No.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Nay.
Amanda Gallo,
No.
Alan Guy,
No.
Susan Granzella,
No.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
No.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence. Jim Ruane,
No.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
motion does not pass.
Would it be appropriate to take another vote based on staff recommendation?
May I make a motion for a neutral position?
Please, Stag.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So with that, is there a public comment on that item and that motion?
Not that we can see now. However, the WebEx application is apparently not displaying raised hands properly. So I'd like to request that anyone who does have comment for the public comment section of the rest of this meeting to please use our chat feature. I don't see any other public comments.
Rico, if you get something in the chat.
There's nothing coming in the chat now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rico. With that, Mariah, would you call roll?
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Gallo,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence. Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. The next bill to be represented on the agenda item is item E2.B, AB 968 by Assembly Member Grayson, which begins on page 79 of your packet. This bill would require sellers of property purchased within the previous 18 months to disclose to the new buyer any room additions, modifications, or alterations made to the property and turned over to the buyer all permits obtained for the work performed. This bill would require sellers to disclose the name and contact information of any contractor who performed the work additions, modifications, or alterations. Lana, would you be so kind as to summarize AB 968?
Thank you, Chair Galarza. This bill is intended to address house flippers. Consequently, this bill applies to sellers who sell a property within 18 months of buying the property. When selling a property, the any Department of Real Estate licensee must currently complete a list of disclosures. Among those are whether room additions, modifications, or alterations were completed without complying with building codes and to provide an explanation. This bill would add to those disclosures exactly what modifications were made, the name and contact information of the contractor who did the work, and it would require the seller to turn over the permits that were obtained to complete that work. Based on technical assistance from staff, this bill was amended to apply to any contractor regardless of license status, or if they have an owner-builder exemption and require, if they have an owner-builder exemption, this bill would also apply to them as well. This bill increases transparency and disclosures to buyers of flip property, encourages contracting with licensed contractors, and will increase the likelihood of sellers obtaining permits and complying with California building codes. So for these reasons, staff are recommending a support position. This bill is currently on second reading on the Senate floor. After the floor vote, it would go back to the Assembly for concurrence vote on the amendments taken after CSLB's technical assistance. From there, it would go to the governor. And I give it back to Legislative Chair Galarza.
Thank you, Fana. As so noted, the staff recommends the support on this bill. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And I'd like to pause briefly and introduce Rodney Kobos, who's joined us online. So we now have one additional board member present.
Thank you.
Include him in our call. Yeah.
So to confirm, it's affirmative from Chair Tigert and David Teletori, second?
Yes.
Thank you. Any board members who would like to have a comment?
Yes, I have a question and a comment.
Yes. Ms. Love.
I want to know, I know there's legislation. Will the contracts be upgraded or amended from escrow and different things like that to make sure that this is in there when the buyers sign?
Donna, did you hear that? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Michael.
No, you do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you rephrase?
If this is going to be something that is required when the sellers disclose, is that going to be in the contract that the buyers sign, that they know that it's there?
Yes, the disclosure form is part of the contract when the property is sold. So it's a mandated part of the contract anytime a property is sold.
And how does that affect an owner that sells their property and doesn't go through the legal, the ways that we do things sometimes? Sometimes it's owner sold. Are they obligated to sell? Will they be obligated as well? And will that be part of the bill?
Yes, this would also apply to them. It would apply to any seller, whether it's a licensee of the Department of Real Estate or if the owner is selling the property themselves.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Registered folk, would you have comment? Thank you. Anyone, any members remote? If not, any public comment on this item? Rico.
No public comment on this item.
Very good. With that, Mariah, would you please be so kind as to call roll?
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Kobos,
Aye.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Gallo,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli approved absence. Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
motion passes.
Thank you. The next bill on the agenda is item 2.2C, AB 1204 from the same number, starting on page 162. Oh, thank you. 162 of your packet. This bill would prohibit contractors under specific circumstances from subcontracting with two or more contractors in the same classification on the same job site. This bill would make a violation of this section cause for disciplinary action according to the author's fact sheet. This bill is intended to prevent contractors from misclassifying employees as subcontractors to avoid complying with workmen's compensation requirements. Fauna will present the review of this bill.
Thank you. AB 1204 was presented in March, and the board decided to watch the bill to give sponsors a chance to address board concerns. At the time, the bill would have prohibited a contractor from subcontracting to a sub unless the sub had employees. The bill also did not specify when this prohibition would apply. Staff worked with the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions to provide technical assistance to the sponsors of AB 1204, and the bill was subsequently amended on April 27th to specify that a specialty contractor would be prohibited. So it changes the bill to a specialty contractor. Before it just said contractor. So the specialty contractor would be prohibited from subcontracting to a contractor in the same specialty unless that sub has employees. Additionally, the bill was amended to make clear this applies to a single project or undertaking. This bill was introduced to address employee misclassification, which is not enforced by CSLB. Additionally, the consumer protection value of this bill is still undetermined because lack of workers' compensation insurance, which actually would impact consumers, was addressed by SB 216 last year. So although staff questioned the value added by this bill, the sponsors were willing to accept amendments to address board concerns. This bill does not carry a fiscal, so staff are recommending that the board take a neutral position on this bill. This bill passed the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions on June 19th and will be heard by the Committee on Labor, Public Employees, and Retirement, but a hearing date has not been set as of this morning. Back to Chair Galarza.
Thank you, Fauna. The current staff recommendation on this bill, as noted, is neutral. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Susan. Is
second.
there a second?
I'll second.
Thank
Diana
you.
Love.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Board members, are there any board members with comments on this item? Any remote board members with comments? I'd like to share my thoughts on this item and why I believe that a neutral is appropriate at this time. There are many public works contractors that mentor small businesses. There are large contractors that do structural concrete work, and that is a specialty trade. They're doing foundations, structural modifications to buildings. And then there are contractors who do flat work or do sidewalk work, same classification, much smaller contractor. That would prohibit a large prime contractor from breaking out sections of the work to support the small business community, which I believe is not the intent, but would casticize any large business that was trying to create opportunities for small business. I believe this is a faulty resolution. And in addition to that, I clearly understand that workman's comp is the issue, but in a few years or next year, I believe, all contractors, regardless of their size and how many people they have, will be required to have workman's comp. So therefore, I support, and this is one of the primary reasons why I support this as a neutral position at this time. Are there any public comments, Rico?
No public comments.
All right. With that, I would go ahead and ask Mariah to call roll, please.
Can I just clarify? So is the motion neutral?
Yes, the motion is to proceed with the neutral. Thank you.
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Gallo,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli approved absence, Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. I'd now like to turn to the next agenda item, which is E2D, AB 1383 by Assemblyman Ortega, which is on page 83 of your booklet. This bill is no longer moving, so there is not a full analysis in this meeting material. The bill would have imposed a reporting requirement for licensees and CSLB to assess licensees who are not in compliance with child support orders. The Department of Consumer Affairs and the Department of Child Support Services have a long-standing interagency agreement to enforce these cases. The agreement created a system comprised of automatic processing where the Department of Child Protective Services is the enforcement entity. Based on the system already in place, the author removed the bill from consideration before it was heard by committee. Because of this bill is presently at an update only, a motion is not required. Are there any board members that like to discuss this item? Any remote board members that like to discuss this item? Rico, or is there anyone in the public that like to discuss this item?
No public comment.
Thank you, Rico. The next agenda item would be E2E, and which is SB 544 by Senator Laird, which begins on page 84. This bill would make multiple changes to implement a permanent remote meeting option that would be allowable under the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act. Fauna, would you be so kind as to provide the basis of this bill and a summary?
Absolutely. Thank you. SB 544 would codify temporary executive orders and laws that allowed state bodies to hold remote meetings over the past couple of years. SB 544 would permanently adopt a remote meeting option so long as the board provides the public with a means to hear audio of the meetings. The board provides a way the public can remotely observe the meeting. The board includes a method to access the meeting remotely, whether a conference call or online platform, and that process is posted on the agenda. The board provides at least one physical site, which is also listed on the agenda. The board implements and advertises a procedure to meet accessibility requirements, and that board members who are participating remotely, if they have any members of the public who are 18 years of age or older at that location, they need to let the name of that person be known and describe the general nature of the relationship with the individual. That wouldn't be on the agenda, but that would be announced during the meeting. This bill does not include an urgency clause. So that means this bill would not take effect until January 1st if adopted as it is currently in print. That would require our next two board meetings to comply with the requirements of Bagley-Keene to hold in-person meetings. So we would go back to the system it was before COVID. Although not effective immediately, this bill would provide flexibility in meeting scheduling, increase the opportunity for public participation, and increase the pool of people who might be willing to serve as a board member. So staff is recommending that the board support this bill. If a support position is taken, staff also request authority to work with the legislative committee chair to continue to support this bill if amended, so long as the concept of permissive remote meetings remains the focal point of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Fauna. Is there a motion to take staff recommendation to support?
I'll make the motion. Diana.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Love.
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Is there a board meeting that'd like to discuss this item? Anyone on the board?
I do have a question. How is it that the official sponsor is the California Commission on Aging? I mean, was it just random, or are they representing the interests of aging? You know, just Mike, Deputy Registrar, you could answer that.
I'm not sure why they sponsored the legislation, but you know, a lot of programs statewide are happy that they did.
I would guess that, you know, a lot of public agencies have these meetings and they might have determined the benefit of these flexibilities. And I don't know that commission, but they might have been particularly interested in the concept.
Johnny.
You know, Keene Bagley's been around for a while, and there was a very good reason that it's been around for a while. You know, I personally feel like, you know, we had an emergency with COVID and all of those things, but, you know, public meetings are important. You should be proud of your vote, and you should face the public when you have your vote. So, you know, I too benefited. I mean, I was president when we had COVID, so we had remote meetings, and I was glad for it. But we can always do it through an emergency. I personally don't support this, so just saying.
Thank you, Member Simpson. Any remote comments from the board?
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, Jim Wayne. This is very similar to what the Brown Act is doing for other meetings. Had a meeting a week ago and I couldn't attend. I had to tell them where I was, who was in the room, over 18. It's just a parallel to the Brown Act is what it is. So,
thank you, Jim. Rico, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you, sir. With that, Mariah, would you be so kind as to take a roll?
Mary Teichert.
Aye.
Rodney Kobos.
Aye.
David De La Torre.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Amanda Gallo.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Diana Love.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli approved absence. Jim Ruane.
aye.
Johnny Simpson.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mariah. The next bill is SB 601 by Senator McGuire, which begins on your packet on 86. This bill is a result of the legislative proposal we discussed at the board meeting on March 21st, 2023. After the board meeting, staff provided the legislative proposal to the author and it was introduced as AB 601 the next day. This bill will increase the statutory limits of misdemeanor violations pertaining to unlawful use of a license. Additionally, this bill would increase the civil penalties for home improvement contract violations which are committed in a declared disaster area. Bonnie, would you be so kind as to summarize SB 601?
Yes. So SB 601 was discussed at the March board meeting and approved as a legislative proposal. Shortly thereafter, it was introduced as a bill authored by Senator McGuire. That proposal originally would have included new payment and performance bond requirements in declared disaster areas. However, after finding out the surety industry had no appetite for underwriting these bonds, the bill was amended to instead include language to increase the civil penalties for home improvement contract violations in declared disaster areas. These violations include failure to execute a written contract with a contract price stated on it, as well as excessive down payment and progress payment practices, which contribute to inferior workmanship and job abandonment in these areas. The bill would increase the civil penalty range for misdemeanor violations from $100 to $5,000 to the new range of $5,000 to $15,000 in declared disaster areas. By increasing the statute of limitations for misdemeanor violations of license use laws and increasing fines in disaster areas, this bill increases CSLB's ability to investigate and take appropriate action when consumers who are already victim of a disaster are taken advantage of by unscrupulous contractors. This bill was heard on Tuesday by the Assembly Committee on Business and Professions and unanimously passed. In fact, this bill has been heard by 3 policy committees, the Appropriations Committee, the Senate floor, and has not received a single no vote. Staff recommend the board support this bill. Although we are not an official sponsor, we are partnered with Senator McGuire to provide primary testimony in support of the bill and provide language and information that they need to get it through. The current status is this bill passed Assembly BMP and will be scheduled for hearing by the Committee on Public Safety next. Thank you.
Thank you, Fana. Is there a motion?
All motion.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. And who's second?
Jim Ruane.
Thank you, Jim. Board members, any comments on this item? I had one question. Who gets the $5,000?
The local jurisdiction does. These are for misdemeanor violations, so it would be the prosecuting county.
Okay. I was hoping CSLB get a piece of that. All right. Any other board members with comments? Remote members? Rico, any members of the public?
No public comment.
Thank you, sir. With that, Mariah, would you be so kind?
Mary Teichert,
Aye.
Rodney Cobos,
Aye.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Amanda Gallo,
Aye.
Alan Guy,
Aye.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Jacob Lopez,
Aye.
Diana Love,
Aye.
Michael Mark,
Aye.
Stephen Pinelli, approved absence, Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson,
Aye.
motion passes.